Daylight come and we want to go. The Nerd Frenzy Podcast. It's showtime. Hey, how's it going, my friends? This is Nick from the Nerd Frenzy Podcast. And we're talking about Beetlejuice. And we have the wonderful Keaton.
Hello. Good to see you again.
How's it going, sister?
It's going well. It's nice to be here talking about a great film.
Mm-hmm.
Classic. I'm excited.
I just watched it this morning. It's funny how it holds up in every single way.
I agree. I was actually thinking, besides the clothing and like there's certain architectural things, besides like certain giveaways, I almost couldn't tell which decade this was in. Because it does, like, there's things that aren't old, you know, a lot of those types of things phase out and you can kind of tell, like, oh, this is an old film. But besides a couple things, the vehicles in town, like, you can't really guess, like, oh, this is an old film because it's corny and this and that. Like, it just doesn't seem that way at all when you're watching it. So I totally noticed the same thing.
And the characters are kind of over the top anyways, so it's not like they're being silly on purpose, so something like that will never age either. But and then the cars being old, you're thinking, well, this is the old town in Connecticut that constantly they're making fun of it and saying, oh my gosh, what can we do here in Connecticut? And they just keep on making fun of it, like Otho, and you just Connecticut, yeah. And it was just funny. And of course, how the movie starts, and there's obviously like a helicopter that's flying over this beautiful area, and it does this really cool transition to this house at the very end of it, which is where Alan and Barbara live, and all of a sudden there's a big old trench that walks over it, and you realize, oh, it's just a miniature. And then it kind of just like goes like that, and that's how the movie starts. Like, oh, cool, what a little awesome transition that automatically got me hooked. And then, of course, with Danny Elfman's amazing opening theme, it just kind of sets it up to immediately be like, what an odd movie I'm about ready to be in for.
Yeah, it instantly gave me the Nightmare Before Christmas kind of feelings, just because he always comes through with the music.
He always comes through. He really does come through with the music, doesn't he?
He does. What do I say? Dan Elfman. And Alec Baldwin's character Alan, I was like, oh my gosh, I wonder if he actually had to pick up this spider, and then he just walks it to the window and throws it out like the top story window.
I know. So nice. that spider is still falling right now.
I was like, oh my gosh, like, oh, he's nice because he's one of the type of people that will let the spider, like, they won't smash it or kill it, because that's a massive. I mean, that's too big for me to, mess with.
Yeah, it's crawling on. I'm like, oh, you're a big guy. I'm like, well, yeah, that's about as big as your head, dude.
Yeah, don't touch it. But he's like, oh, I'm just gonna put it outside from the top story. But yeah, there's so many, and there's a lot of known actors in that movie, and they're different from all the other movies we've kind of seen them in, so it's such a fun movie to watch. And I mean, Michael Keaton, don't get me started.
In the movie for like 17 minutes actually, but yet the whole time you're watching them, and that's the biggest thing. I worked in Carbondale today, and I typically, if I want to watch a movie, I don't ever watch it. I hear it, and it's a movie I've seen. I hear it, and then I'm visualizing in my head what's going on. But today I was so hooked on Beetlejuice, I actually pulled over and then said, I will just rush the rest of my route, and then I'll watch this movie in my truck. And that's what I did. And,
Nice.
and the reason why I did that is because I was driving to Carbondale, and I could hear, Barbara and Alan talking, and I could hear the story. Everything was fun. Oh yeah. Oh, my brain was telling me exactly what was happening. And then all of a sudden, I hear, "Come on down!" I'm just like, "Oh my gosh, Michael Keaton!" And then I just like, okay, so I have to watch this because every single time Michael Keaton was talking, as we mentioned before the podcast started, he's so magnetic. He's quick, and he's just witty, and he's just on it, and you're just like, oh my gosh, man, I get why they call this movie Beetlejuice and not, oh, we're sorry for the two dead people who now are ghosts or something like
Yeah.
that. The movie should not be called Beetlejuice because he technically has nothing to do with the story, but oh wait, he's so awesome. Let's call it Beetlejuice.
Yeah, seriously. Oh my gosh. And his, I mean, like, I feel like that character actually exists. And I love, like, all the little things he does in the model. He like, seduces, in a way, the house fly to eat it with some weird nougat.
Yeah, it's like zigzag. It's like,
Oh,
and
yeah.
he's like doing like 3 or 4 accents, and then he's going back and like, hey, come here, and he's kind of doing what Robin Williams is like maybe the best known for in the world, which is just quickly just going for it and just reaching through different characters and then just kind of bringing that, and then as he's chewing on the fly, you hear help me," and of course it's from the original Fly movie, but it's also disturbing because you're like, I hate flies. They're just maggots, but yet I feel bad for this fly.
Oh, I didn't know that, so that makes that so much
Oh
more
yeah,
funny.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
Like, that's
Vincent Price is
hilarious.
the fly. Help me! And it's because it's not a fly in the movie. It's a little person that was mistaken, and it's like at the end that it's about ready to get eaten by the spider. It's help me! But it sounds like that because it's so small, and it's kind of like a big old long Twilight Zone movie. But it's really good. But yeah,
Oh my gosh! And this is like a handful of years before he does Batman, right?
not a handful. He did Beetlejuice in '88, and then the instant success of it allowed for him to get the job of Batman, and it came out in '89. Funny enough.
Okay. I was thinking it came out in like '94. I might be thinking about a different Batman, but um, wow, yeah, and what totally different characters those are. He's like the handsome Bruce Wayne, and in Beetlejuice, he's obviously this like repulsive character that has, something I picked up was that he lived through the Black Plague, and we briefly discussed that was in the 1300s. So it's like this guy's several hundred years old. Oh my gosh.
And he just 700 years of him being the most annoying person to everyone, and he's not just a ghost. He's like, oh, I'm scary, which he was scary too, but he was obnoxious. Like he was very much like he was trying to like pretty much just rape everyone. I mean, especially Lydia, which I think she was 17 or she was 16 or 17 in the movie, and you're thinking like, oh, this whole thing is dark when you really think about it, but it has such light humor that it works, but it still is a very dark concept, and I guess before it even became what it is now, it actually was supposed to be no light-hearted stuff in there at all. It was supposed to be completely dark. Beetlejuice was supposed to be this Middle Eastern man who had these big old fang wings, and he would just go in there and just like I don't even know I don't even know what they were gonna do with it, but they were having trouble finding someone, and then they got Michael Keaton involved. And Tim Burton, funny enough, didn't even know anything about what they wanted the character to look like. And it was Michael Keaton who came up with the idea. Said, "Hey, how about you make my hair look like I just stuck my finger in an electric socket and
Oh,
put some disgusting stuff like some mold or something on my face." And then that's what happened. V. Neal, one of my favorite makeup artists, who now does the Face Off TV show, she got an Oscar, funny enough, for the makeup job. So
oh wow. I
yeah.
know. I love how there's like green. I mean, it's like he's deteriorating because he's so old and crusty, and like I can I can almost imagine how he smells because of the way he's dressed and the way he looks and everything, and his teeth are gnarly. I was so curious as to, as far as the dialogue in the movie goes, I'm curious as to how much he followed along with it, or if how much of it was improv, because there's things that seem like it it flowed out so naturally that I'm like he had to have just made that up, like because it just, there's some lines, the something that I caught this time watching it that I'd never noticed before was when they were kind of interviewing him and like, well, what are your qualifications? And he says Juilliard, which is a music school. So I was like, okay, that's hilarious. Harvard, and he's watched The Exorcist 167 times, and it just keeps getting funnier every time I watch it. and not to mention I'm dead. But
not to mention you're speaking to a dead guy. So what do you think? Yeah.
And I kept going back to like Juilliard and Harvard though. I was, oh my gosh.
Which of course, and still of course to this day, but at, you know, in the 80s, that Juilliard was the #1, and it still is the #1 school for acting, and of course music being the #1, but acting as well. A lot of people go to Juilliard to get classically trained and whatnot. So it's very important for both. A lot of people who say, "Oh no, I went to Juilliard," they're like, "Oh, okay, so I'll take you seriously then." That's what Juilliard was, and his favorite thing, like how it kept on getting funnier when we watched Exorcist. We were just talking about this before too, how Dad to this day will be like, "Oh no, Exorcist is pretty much the scariest movie that you will ever see in your life." So this is 1973 this movie came out, and there's only a couple other movies around that were this dark and stuff, you know, and and it is scary. Oh, I mean, I tell you what, it still holds up to this day. But the fact that Michael Keaton, you know, he's underneath there, and he's just so quickly throwing this out there that even probably Tim Burton's going like, I mean, I don't know what to do with this guy. He's just so outrageous, and it was. I would say that he is the reason why Beetlejuice was so damn good. But funny enough, Keaton, every single character in this movie is excellent.
Yeah, they all played their part. Even and I don't know the actors and actresses' name besides Winona Ryder, but even the parents who, you know, are in Home Alone and Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and I like them as actors and actresses. They're like, they even play their part, and I mean, the mom is extremely annoying. I want to slap her throughout the majority of the film, and the dad is like, you kind of feel bad for him.
Oh, I do 100%, because he just wants to just relax, and he just like, hey, he just wants the simple things, and no one else does in his family. Everyone else is weird to some degree, and he just like, I just want to do bird watching or just sit in this room and, you know, just look around.
Yeah, I want to do nothing. I don't want to be bothered. I don't want to. So it's so funny them moving away from New York, and she's this eared sculptor, and nobody understands or appreciates her art because it's very weird and bizarre. But the people that they bring into the house for the dinner, and the whole episode of them possessing
the hand.
Whole, yeah.
Come, Mr. Tallyman, tally me banana. Daylight come and me one go home. Live 6 foot, 7 foot, 8 foot bunch.
Like that whole part is hilarious, and how,
because it's outrageous. It's outrageously like, what the hell is happening? And it's like these moments when you're completely caught off guard, and like the whole movie has calypso kind of music. It has Harry Belafonte with like 5 songs throughout the whole movie that just kind of gives like the. It's weird because the movie has like, it's like they're throwing out like, we're being scary, but we're also being tongue in cheek. We're being silly, but we're also being corny on purpose. And then everything was done like when you see the snake and whatnot, it was all done in a like either like stop motion and all that. There was no stupid visual effects that cheapened the movie. It was all done in some kind of regard that to this day Tim Burton loves his stop motion. And he loves his character actors, and Michael Keaton rivals Robin Williams in a lot of things, but but this is probably, if you had to say, what is Michael Keaton's best movie because of his performance, not because of like, oh, Batman was the best Batman. It's like, no, I don't care about that. Best performance. I would say probably Beetlejuice. Funny enough, and it's such an odd movie, but he's great in it.
Yeah, and there's a couple fairly more recent ones that I can't remember what it's called. Birdcage, maybe? No.
Birdcage is Robin Williams.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. I do love me some Robin Williams. Every once in a while when I'm feeling down and I need to watch just a good film, I watch Good Will Hunting.
Oh no, I get it. But like with Robin Williams, there's certain things that he does that is very memorable, and like Aladdin being one of them. And when I saw Will Smith do it, I didn't feel the same passion, but I probably would have felt that same passion if Michael Keaton would have been asked to do it. And maybe that's a very like a brat, like a stupid thing to say, but I feel like Michael Keaton is one of those people, and luckily he kind of came back. There were certain things that like Birdman. Was able to bring back remind people of the wonderfulness of Michael Keaton, and you see not only like Michael Keaton playing a specific character, he's playing a broken character, and you kind of forget, oh, Michael Keaton's a damn good actor, and he's a character. He's one of those guys. He's like the Marlon Brandos or the Christian Bales, but with the Daniel Day-Lewis's in some way, but without the weird like, oh, I'm gonna act like this person in real life. They just. Able to turn it on and turn it off, like Robin Williams, and I'll use Robin Williams today in for any kind of wonderfulness because Robin Williams was the best at it. Michael Keaton's up there with him too.
Yeah, and I actually said Birdcage and was trying to come up with Birdman.
Okay.
It's really funny that happened because we were just talking about Robin Williams as well. But Birdman was another just fantastic performance from Michael Keaton, but Beetlejuice, it's crazy how little he is, like you said, 17 minutes, and I didn't realize that, you think he takes over the entire film because of his presence in every single scene he's in. But yeah, he's barely even in the film, but he's just so good, and he demands to be the center of attention in every single scene he's in, and it's almost like just the way he's trying to seduce Winona Ryder's character. And, I mean, that whole scene when they're getting married, and I'm like...
She meant nothing to me. She meant nothing, I promise.
I know, he's got the finger. Oh, my gosh.
But there's so many characters, like Otho. I mean, and don't get me wrong, we haven't talked much about Alan and Barbara, and they carry the show so wonderfully, but there are so many other characters in this movie, like I said, Catherine O'Hara playing Mrs. Dietz, and then Jeffrey Jones playing Mr. Dietz. They were so perfect, and funny enough, Catherine O'Hara was actually not supposed to. She wasn't not the first choice. It was actually Angelica Houston, but she got sick, so then she had to cancel because she got like a really big sickness. And then she got her roles after that, like Witches and Addams Family, that were kind of the same kind of thing. Yeah, and I could definitely, and typically I don't like to say like, oh man, the only person that fits this role is that person, but I could also see Angelica Houston fitting that role too. But Catherine O'Hara, first of all, and funny enough, Catherine O'Hara this is probably one of her best performances too. But Schitt's Creek is one of my favorite shows. It's so witty and wonderful, and Eugene Levy and Dan Levy and all these wonderful people that made that show. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's so good, and it's a reminder that people like Catherine O'Hara, she started out the same way, not in SNL but in Second City in Chicago, and she's one of those Canadian actors who did all that stuff in Canada with the John Cannys and all those wonderful people, and then those style of people who came here and then were wonderful. That was all like she was part of that whole thing, and then she did my favorite Tim Burton movie, Sally. She did all of Sally's stuff, which I don't know if a lot of people know that, but she is, and then of course Home Alone. Catherine O'Hara is extremely talented, and I think she is rarely ever talked about.
Yeah, she's very underrated. I didn't know that she voiced Sally. I mean, and now that you say it,
Yeah, it makes sense, right? Yeah.
I can hear her voice. Yeah, that's crazy. Um, yeah, I enjoyed. I mean, I think one of the very quiet characters was the dad, and his subtle humor parts were super
Oh,
hilarious.
oh yeah.
Just little parts, and again, I don't know who added them in there, if it was him or but this movie they add subtle things because there's a lot of loud parts where it's very obviously supposed to be silly and out there and rambunctious, but then there's when he's sitting back trying to relax, opens his magazine and like all the advertising papers come out and he's like irritated with it, which is something that it's like something very tiny that we all that we have all dealt with. It's like, oh my gosh, like seriously. So there's little things like that I'm like, God, give the guy a break. Let this guy relax. He left New York. Let the guy relax. Like,
Oh, and it sounds like he makes that phone call to his boss Max in New York, and he goes, "Hey, I have been your top earner, and I've always been your top earner." And Max goes, "That is true. You are my top earner." And then he hung up, and he's like, "Oh, jackass," or whatever he called him, or putz. He called him a putz.
yeah,
And I'm thinking, well, I don't. He doesn't sound like a putz to me. He sounds like he's made you your money, you idiot. So when he's trying to tell you something, you should probably listen to him. And I kind of I feel bad because he is so overpowered for the most part. I mean, sometimes he's able to kind of push her away, but he's so overpowered by his woman, and it's so hilarious because you see in this beautiful little chemistry just going back and forth, and everyone has it. And then Lydia walks in and like, "Oh, my life is darkness," and then everyone's like, "Jesus, like you're too much." And it's a beautiful thing because especially in the '80s, like I don't think goths have been around too much longer than that, and I'd imagine that even though it's definitely from pop culture and whatnot considered to be a lot more okay now. People are like, "Oh, cool! I like gothic people. I love that one movie that had that Marilyn Manson. I love well, maybe not anymore because he's a piece of crap." But well, that's for later. I've talked about that too much. It breaks my heart. A lot of sexual harassment and abuse he's done to a lot of women.
No, I don't know anything about
Yeah. It's a bummer. But anyways, the goth scene was made popular, and it wasn't probably as much in the '80s, and her character was all like, oh, death and life sucks, and it's like, oh, that's typically what we think of a gothic person, but yet there was so much wonderfulness in her lightheartedness that she did care about people. She just felt like no one cared about her, and then I'm guessing they never ever once explain it, but obviously her mom is either passed away or left them, so that probably did some damage to her.
Yeah, and that's something I couldn't remember if they actually explained it because she read some of that book, the book of the deceased.
Yep.
And she quoted something out of it like why she's able. Oh, people ignore the weird
And the strange or something like that. Yeah.
the strange and weird, and I'm weird and strange. But I also just generally because that movie did take some ideas of the idea of what most people have of a ghost. I assumed that she could see them and no one else could was because she's almost got that innocence of a child. She's almost got like something inside her. Like that's what I was wondering. Is there another reason other than this? Like she's just an odd kind of got one foot on the other side type character where she's just got a lot of darkness in her or sadness, and that's why she can see, kind of like in Harry Potter, like you can only see these characters if you've seen death. So I kind of was wondering about that, like how come she can see but nobody else can? Because she's opened up to see it, or
And I think that I was about ready to say, I think that's exactly what it is. She's open up to it because she's on a different spectrum, I think, is what they're trying to put out. Like, because you know how they say like babies and whatnot or certain kind of animals, and I think she's just one of those kind of they make certain movies about where like, oh, I can see the dead or whatnot. I think she just happens to have that gift, and I don't know if it is due to her mom passing or leaving them, or if it's due to her just gothic soul where she just truly just loves darkness and loves being unhappy. But
Yeah.
but at the end of the movie, you find out that what she really needed to, because she still, was probably gothic, but what she needed, and it completely changed her personality in a sense, was she needed a family that like loved her. And even though obviously her dad loved her and her mom was there, it was obvious that they were like you said, he just wanted to do his own thing, and he would literally push her away and say, I'm trying to relax, and she's trying to talk to him. And then the mom, she's just so into herself that there's nowhere her to turn to. And of course, after a while, that kind of thing, she's gonna start saying, "Oh, well, I'm a loser, and like life is sorrow, and love will never be for me." And then, but by the end of the movie, you see her like she's all bubbly and whatnot because she has love.
Oh yeah, and it's funny how they incorporate that, because this movie is literally about death, and but what a lighthearted, innocent, loving relationship Alan and Barbara have, and the only negative thing that not negative, but the only like really sad thing about their life was that they made it apparent they were trying to have children and they couldn't. So that was something that I feel like a lot of people may miss. That it's like they finally get to almost play this role that they've been wanting to forever. And throughout the movie, there's this theme of, but I want to help that little girl. I want to be a part of, they wanted to be a part of Lydia's life. They wanted to push these annoying, horrible people out of their house, but they were also like, but what about Lydia? I like this girl, and I have a connection with her. So it was this full circle, and it's such a silly movie in some ways. So you're like, how did you do that? How did you go full circle and connect this in such a like lighthearted way with such a sad topic? Because there's a few times too that there's some heavy topics like suicide, several times mentioned throughout the movie,
with several ghosts in like the movie too.
Yeah, because that one, and it's something, I mean, Kyler watched it with me, and I vaguely explained what happened.
Sure.
But that one where she exposed her wrists and said,
"My little accident." Yeah.
My little, yeah. And, I told Kyler, if you get cut there's a lot of veins and you bleed a lot. I mean, and that's how she died. She bled to death, basically. But then it was mentioned at the dinner table when they were talking about someone having like feeling suicidal or having a suicide attempt, and it being like casual dinner. I mean, it was like
Juno, the caseworker. She had a slit throat, and when I was a kid, I used to think that it was because of her smoking. But then I think she killed herself because even Otho, whenever they're having dinner, he goes, "Yes, I was told that anyone who kills himself becomes a social worker." Ha ha ha! And I'm thinking that they're trying to let us know that's anyone who's working was probably. Kill himself, like the guy who goes, the flat guy who's bringing them places. I'm guessing he probably stepped in front of a bus.
Yeah, and oh my gosh, and there's things like that I didn't pick up on, and even the bus, like I figured, you assume he got ran over, but that makes sense with that, But I picked up on that with their social worker, but I didn't pick up on the guy that got ran over.
That also tells me that Beetlejuice may have killed himself too, because he used to work with Juno, and he says he used to be my assistant. So I'm wondering if whenever Michael Keaton told Tim Burton, like, I want you to give me the makeup job, like I got electrocuted, I'm wondering if maybe that is kind of what was implemented into how he actually died.
Oh,
I'm not sure.
yeah,
I'm not sure, but I mean, it would explain.
yeah.
I'm not sure about the mold thing, but it probably has to do with just living underground, like you said, eating cockroaches and just hanging out and being disgusting,
Being a
decrepit creature.
grimy.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But he's, oh my gosh, he's so great. And there's so, like I said, every single time he comes on, there's not one. I mean, the movie's not dull anyways, but when he's on, the energy is at a 10 the whole time, and you're sitting there going, "Are you on cocaine, man? I mean, you're just going for it." I mean, Robin Williams, he was when he did his stand up and whatnot, he would have like 7 or 8 water bottles sitting next to him, and he would drink them, and he would profusely sweat. Where you would watch a stand up, and you see literally water running down his face, and you're like, "Okay, well, I accept this because Robin Williams is Robin Williams." And I'm wondering, like, Michael Keaton must some kind of same thing because he's jumped doing backflips all over the place and just like
Oh
around
yeah.
everyone. And I mean, it's one. But I will say, Keaton, I think, I mean, the biggest part of this movie would have to be Tim Burton.
Because of the feel throughout the
Yes,
whole movie.
yes,
He set the mood in every scene. He set the mood for, okay, this scene's gonna have my music, or I mean, like the Danny Elfman esque music, and it's gonna set this tone and these characters and this. I mean, every scene was set and perfect because of him.
hmm
So I definitely agree with you, and it's the chemistry that Barbara and Alan have with each other. Is perfect. It's crazy how young Alec Baldwin is in that movie. Like that's
hmm
the movie when I watch it, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's so young in this movie. It's
Yeah, yeah,
crazy.
yeah. He's like, and it's funny because Alec Baldwin is a very, very witty person too. I mean, he's done it all as well. He's a very talented person, and you're wondering like you probably had to hold back a lot in this movie because Michael Keaton's doing all the jumping, and you do a lot of jumping in your stuff. So like, when you watch him in anything, he's always taking command of the scene. But they had him play a very straight laced person, and it's, I guess since you know his personality in real life, you know like, oh man, he would have also done probably a good job at Michael Keaton's job too. But uh, it's just like you said, they just plan all these wonderful actors and they put them in these positions, and every single person, even that Jane, the annoying realtor trying to sell their house, was like on point. It was such a good movie.
Yeah, poking her head, like after she was shooed away by Gina Davis, she pokes her head in with Alec Baldwin. Like, hello, no, Jane. It's
See,
like, gosh, he's annoying me.
and you find her annoying, but then you see her a little bit later, and she's just there, kind of mourning with her daughter, mourning with the clothes on at the house where they passed, and then she's there even again, dropping off a skeleton key. So it's obvious that she obviously cared about him, and they probably cared about her. She just, I think they only paint her in a quick like, oh, what an annoying lady, but it was obvious that she probably is, is liked by everyone. Just probably like, oh
Yeah,
no, here she comes to sell, to sell something to me.
yeah, like, oh, you can deal with her today, honey.
The fact that I remember her name is I think,
I was gonna say, I'm impressed. Yeah, I was like, I'm impressed because she only. I mean, we barely saw her. She was in the first scene, pretty much, of talking, and then we saw her without saying anything with her daughter, where she's outside and gets back in the car and leaves, and then just whenever she gives the skeleton key. So it's very, very brief that we even see her. So yes, I'm impressed that you did remember her name.
Well, and I think that's because there's so many wonderful, talented people that are making this movie that there's not one. I mean, yeah, you can easily say that Michael Keaton, or Tim Burton, or Danny Elfman. But at the end of the day, like I said, V. Neil, the special makeup effects, not just from Beetlejuice, but you look at whenever they're all aged and decrepit, when they're all old, in their wedding attire, and you're looking at them and you feel so damn bad for them because they're not conveying like zombie, they're conveying like we're dying, and even Lydia like many times she's like, they're dying, stop it. And Otho was even kind of like, even Otho felt bad. He's like, I'm sorry, I can't.
Yeah, and I mean, everybody's like, okay, this is enough. And with all of that makeup and whatever was on, they conveyed so much sadness in her eyes. Like she was so sad in the way her body language was and the way her eyes were. I was like, oh my gosh, this is breaking my heart.
And even though they're ghosts, and you're like, well, I don't really, and they have a little bit, like, they always leave a little bit open to interpretation of what, what happens if you die again. I mean, and they kind of talk about, like, that one place where the thing opens when they're walking by, and like, oh, that's the land of the lost. That's for people who were exorcised and whatnot. So I'm wondering, like, there's got to be like certain places, like almost like, I wonder if like a 7 layers of hell kind of situation, but not hell, but maybe like of just being dead. There's like different forms of it and whatnot. And I wonder if there is like an actual heaven, or if you just actually become a ghost for this whole time. Because I remember, I don't know, I didn't understand this. Maybe you can, Keaton. They said something about, Juno said something about 125 years that you had to kind of deal with this, and then something happened after that.
That's what I was very curious about, because I just thought, okay, is that when your existence stops? Like, you existed at one point in time and now it stops? Because I thought about, what about, because they're 125 years, if the people that are currently in the home live and die, are they going to now be sharing that space with 2 separate ghost families and another family that moves in? Like, these are things that I just thought about today that I've never thought about before.
Well, and they have them sprinkled in other movies that you could watch. Like, if you watch the first season of American Horror Story, that's kind of what was going on there. Just like through the years, there was like a haunted house that was killing people, and those people were kind of victims there. And then by the end of it all, there's like, oh, and it was like 30 ghosts here, and they're all just from different random situations. So maybe that's something like that. And then maybe maybe, I'm not sure exactly, because I mean, so does that imply, like, even if you were a bad person, like I don't know, because was Beetlejuice a bad person when he was alive?
Well, because of the assumption that he killed himself, like, people, I feel like maybe the way that you die, too. I mean, maybe not the way that you die, but I think suicide clearly put you
in a special place. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe they served a certain amount of time before they were released or something. I mean,
but
I don't know.
But Barbara and Alan didn't kill themselves. They died in a tragic car accident.
Yeah, so maybe they, because it seemed unfinished or something, and they weren't elderly or something, they got to spend more time before they went on to this. That's what I do like. They left it to interpretation. However, I feel like they did insinuate what happens afterwards. I just can't remember, or I can't think. But I'm not positive either. I don't know if they left that to kind of imagination of, like, and after the 125 years, that's what you get. And I was trying to think, why 125 years? Like, why not? Like, that's such an odd amount of time.
They probably just assume that no one would have deep discussions about it ever in life. They just watch the movie and be like, that was a good movie. I enjoyed that. And I bought popcorn. I had, soda. And then, Michael Keaton was jumping around. And then, anyways, let's do something else. Like, oh. Yeah. But now we're having a podcast going, yes, the sophistication really brings.
Yeah. You know what I'm curious about? How come Beetlejuice, the title of the movie, is spelt differently than his name?
I want to say it was just an advertising thing, because Beetlejuice actually is one of the brightest stars in our solar system, and it's spelled that way, the weird way, like the Geise instead of the Juice. And I want to say, because I'm not sure, but I want to say it probably was just because when you see Beetlejuice, you're like, well, what is this, some kind of Middle Eastern movie? I don't care about that. I don't know.
Well, yeah, and I was wondering if it had something to do with where he grew up, because he lived through the Black Plague, which was in Europe. I was like, does Beetlejuice translate to Beetlejuice in English or something?
Well,
I was like, I have done no research on. I just was. Maybe it's something weird like that.
They had a couple. They had 2 other titles. The first title was like like called like Ghost at Home or something like that. It was kind of, and they didn't like it. And as a joke,
I don't either.
no, I didn't. And I'm butchering it a little bit, but the second one I won't butcher because it's easy to remember. As a joke, Tim Burton said, because he was getting frustrated with him, he said, "Let's just call it Scared Sheetless," like the sheets, with the yeah. And then the studio thought it was extremely clever, and he just found it to be just wow, guys, good job. And then they finally came to a different thing because Michael Keaton came in and kind of changed the whole feel of the whole movie.
Yeah, I would love to see some sort of behind the scenes of the making of the movie and like, hey, your line is this, but you can kind of, or like he says something totally different, and they're like, that's actually better. Like I wonder if that happened at all, because it seems like whatever was flowing out of him, it came from him, not always something written plainly on a piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
Or it just seemed like this was written for Michael Keaton playing Beetlejuice to say.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't, like, I don't see Tim Burton, because Tim Burton doesn't really have that quality, in my opinion, of being able to put those words that you hear Beetlejuice saying when he just kind of off the cuff weird things, when he's like, instead of saying "make my day" like Clint Eastwood, he's saying "make my millennium." I could see that being a Michael Keaton thing, not a Tim Burton thing. I might be wrong. I could see, because I knew Michael Keaton's movies before that, before Beetlejuice, and there's obviously a certain flair that Michael Keaton brings. He kind of has that just very energetic, like constant, like hey, how's it going? How's it going?
Yeah.
And like almost like I could see him almost playing like if he was younger, I could see him playing what's his name? That's a Quagmire from Family Guy. I could possibly see him playing that character just because he's just always moving around like Quagmire is. Quagmire, of course, is always about like, and funny enough, Quagmire is always being a sexual predator too. Which,
Yeah.
but yeah, the whole time just it's funny because there's nothing funny about that. But when you watch this movie, you're like, well, wow, Michael Keaton, you're hilarious. Like when he's putting the little stick up Barbara's skirt and she like snaps it away. He's like, what? Like it's just like the whole time he's just being a dog. And I don't know if you remember this, Keaton. You might have been too young, but they did a cartoon. Do you remember that?
Of Beetlejuice?
Yeah.
No, I don't remember it, but please tell me more.
So it kind of goes off of. It doesn't really go off of the movie that much. So what happens? It's oddly enough, Beetlejuice and Lydia become best friends, and then they go on mini adventures, and it just kind of shows Beetlejuice turning in all these things to help their situation, their dire situation they're in, and he's kind of like a anti-hero in it. Well, he is an anti-hero. He's kind of even a hero. He's always burping and stuff, but he's like, ugh! And he kind of sounds like Michael Keaton. They did a pretty decent job, whoever the voice actor did. Lydia doesn't sound anything like the voice actor. But it actually was pretty decent. I remember the theme song was also very energetic and had the same kind of approach as the Danny Elfman thing, but it had just a different, I guess, a cartoony style from it. But it was also pretty good. I would recommend it to you because there was a lot of times I remember watching it, even when I was a kid. I remember there was a lot of stabs at certain injustices, the same way that like Simpsons or South Park does. And so Beetlejuice kind of has sometimes they'd be like, hey, what do you think about that? And then it's like ooh, just kind of like called that president of the United States out at that time. I was like, oh geez, that's so they were but then funny enough, Disney bought ABC, which was and then they had to immediately like stop doing that stuff.
It's too bad.
Oh yeah. So but yeah, Keaton, the cartoon's not bad if you ever want to try it, but it is kind of, it starts off strong and then like last season it gets kind of weird, but like I said, it's probably because Disney took over, and then it kind of just, you could kind of see the quality go down a little bit because their whole like, hey, we're calling you people out for this bad thing had to stop because Disney is probably doing the bad thing.
Yeah. They got too much on the line.
Oh yeah, but yeah, overall, and I'm not gonna say too much about this because I don't want to get my hopes high because they've been talking about it forever. But they're still talking about doing a sequel.
Really?
Oh yeah.
With Michael Keaton too?
So what they both said, and I've seen the interview throughout the years. Actually, they've done many interviews about it on on different occasions, and they've all said, "I'll do it if Tim Burton does it," and Tim Burton will say, "I'll do it if Michael Keaton does it." I mean, so it's as simple as that. And then people say, "Well, what about Gina Davis?" And I'll do it if Michael Keaton does it. I'll do it if I'll do it if Tim Burton does it. So that's all they care about. But the reason why they keep on not doing a sequel is because Tim Burton keeps on seeing that he's not getting the right. He wants to do it perfectly, and he's saying, "Oh no," because he gets a lot of people who send him screenplays, and then and he's like, "No, that's not the feel. That's not the feel. That's not. I don't want to do a sequel that way. That's just a typical bullcrap sequel." So
Yeah.
if they can never,
Good for him.
yeah, exactly. And if they can, and sadly, Tim Burton himself has not had a very good record, especially in his last like 6 or 7 movies of doing reboots. But his stuff. And even though Beetlejuice was not written by him, he took it and changed a lot of it, but it's pretty much his baby. And I've noticed that Tim Burton's at his best whenever he does his babies. Like Night Before Christmas, a lot of people think that's 100% his baby, but Henry Selick was the guy who did all the stop motion directing, and it's safe. I mean, I would say that would be mostly him too. But this whole universe of Beetlejuice. As long as it'd be a good sequel, I'd be down for it. But if not, leave it alone, and let's just keep Beetlejuice being the magnificent piece of art it is.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that a sequel so many years later could potentially taint the original, and I'm not really willing to risk that.
And nor I.
And I do have to mention at some point that I was named after Michael Keaton. So, and my boyfriend is Michael. So we are
Keaton,
the household of Michael Keaton. So
and
I had to throw it out there.
Oh, and it's funny. I didn't even think about bringing that up because that is absolutely the truth, and we've been told this all of our lives. No, we were huge fans of Michael Keaton, so we named Keaton that, because your real name is Jana Keaton, and that's kind of same thing I did with Logan William. I mixed it up a little bit differently, but we took it from movies, and that's what our family does. we like, my name came from what is it? 8 is Enough, I think it was called, or it was a show kind of like Brady Bunch. It came out, and I guess one of Mom and Dad's favorite characters on the show. His name was Nick, and he was like this witty little guy who was just always like, "Hey!" And it's like, oh yeah, that's gonna be it. Michael Keaton is the man, and Beetlejuice is one of the best movies I've ever seen. I watched it. I still very much love it. Tim Burton, maybe bring back that original charm, and if you can muster up a Beetlejuice movie, but if not, I appreciate what you've done for the movies. And Danny Elfman, I'm one of those people, Keaton. I think that music is probably the most engaging thing for me personally with any kind of movie. I think either a movie that's like a horror movie who's playing like that eerie kind of like someone's in the house. No matter what, I think music is what makes your soul jump and move and shout and dance and all that kind of stuff. So I find Danny Elfman, I can never talk highly enough about him, because he does the vocals for Dale when the movie first starts. Like whenever you hear "Daylight Come and Me One Go," boom, boom, it's all Danny Elfman. And of course, he does the singing voice for Jack in Night Before Christmas. He does a lot of the singing for the Corpse Bride. I mean, he composes and arranges, and much love to Danny Elfman, much love to Beetlejuice, and much love to you, Keaton. Thank you for doing this with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, a true pleasure, as always.
And thank you for hearing my last rant about that too.
It sounded like It sounded like an award acceptance speech. Like, I'd like to thank Danny Elfman for making this film and having the courage to move forward. I would like to thank Tim Burton for, like, you kind of...
and the music's coming along. I'm like, I know it's my podcast, but I still go,
That's your award.
Oh, well, Keaton, I love you, and thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. I can't wait till next time.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, take care, guys. Love you, everyone.
Shake, 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 Sinora, shake your body line. Shake, 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 Sinora, shake it all the time. Work, 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 Sinora, work your body line.
Hope you like Italian. Where'd you go? Hey, come on. Hey, where'd you go? Oh, hey, come on. You gotta work with me here. I'm just trying to cut a deal. What do you want me to do? Where are you? You bunch of losers! You're working with a professional here!